to the US Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida. You can see on the big screen they got a couple airplanes out there. It should look pretty cool. And looks like a video of an F-18 coming in to land. Okay, let's go into the museum. My Lord, this place is slam-packed with neat stuff. You see an old flying boat here. Henriette HD-1. That is really neat. My Lord, they got airplanes for days in here. Let's try to walk over here. I'm trying to go where there's not a lot of people to cut down the background noise. That is too cool. "100 years, Navy aircraft carriers." Oh man, look at this. Now for those of you guys that know me, you know I do enjoy a good museum. Doesn't have to be aviation, as I've been able to tour a lot of museums this last year. They got a really nice display of some models in this cabinet here. This is really neat to see. All kinds of neat stuff there.
Yeah. Have you seen that interview? Yeah.
And then a beautiful old biplane. Looking over here, we got an F-11 Tiger, good old Grumman airplane. That's pretty cool to see. And then an F-3. And note the wooden floats. This airplane has wooden floats, and the woodwork in there looks like something you'd see on a Baldwin piano. It's really a gorgeous airplane. This is an S4C Tommy. Neat little airplane. And you can see here is the sign for it. And then over here is a old World War I Fokker D7. And this is actually some fabric off of one of them. This is really amazing to think this is from World War I, which ended in 1918, 100 years plus, 106 to be exact. And they have really set this place up nice. Great day in the morning. And then here is the Newport 28, which this was a plane that fought against the D7, which to see the D7, we'll look right overhead, and there is the D7. Years ago I had a little model of one of those, and unfortunately it met an untimely end on the ground. So moving over here, got this old biplane. This airplane was a seaplane. It's a humongous machine here. Check out the engines on this thing. Let's zoom in for a closer look. Great Scott, look at that. This is an NC4, or November Charlie 4, as we call it in phonetic alphabet. And interestingly enough, this is a 4-engine airplane, and you will see that the 4th engine is actually behind the center engine. So you have one in the front and one in the back, and then the other 2 engines just have, or pylons I should say, just have one engine. This was the first plane to cross the ocean. Really interesting. Here's the nose of this airplane, or the bow, I guess if you would call it. And here we have an FF-1 biplane. This thing looks like it would be super fun to fly. Good heavens. Let's have a really good look at this biplane here. This thing has got a monster wingspan. I could only imagine that it probably made some interesting noises in flight. Amazing. This is pretty neat because this biplane here actually has retractable gear. And it was actually the first fighter produced by Grumman. If it's like everything else Grumman built, I promise you this thing had some serious building structure to it. Let's have a look at the landing gear retraction system here. Man, that is too cool. That is some serious structure right there. Beautiful round engine. And of course it's overshadowed by this great big old biplane, the NC-4. Now we come over and here is a Boeing F4B/4. Man, this is just an amazing museum. I'm going to walk through here and try to get a couple of other shots if I can. Here is the aft section of the NC-4, and you can see the 4th engine right back here. Now talk about something interesting. Take a look at the empennage. So a whole bunch of tube and truss structure going back to the tail section here. Vertical, horizontal stabilizers, elevators, and rudders. It's funny, that empennage is about a little bit bigger than a Pitt Special biplane's whole wingspan. And then as we look over here, this is an old propeller, Naval Aircraft Factory. Oh, and one of my favorites, a Curtiss JN4 Jenny. Man, if I could get into any one little airplane and take a ride or fly it myself, this would be it. This was used in the early 1900s for barnstorming. Yeah, again, I think I was born many years too late. This engine was an OX5 engine. Apparently it wasn't the most reliable power plant out there, but it did the job. And then looking over, there is the D7 Fokker in the distance. Well, let's take a look at the wing structure of this Jenny. This is fascinating. Again, the aircraft mechanic in me, I've always been fascinated with structures. You take a look at the wing. I mean, this was all hand built. Spars, ribs, a veneer leading edge. and then the wooden struts. And then look at all the wire bracing in here. Not only outside of the wing, but inside. There's a ton of bracing inside of here. And then we come over to the fuselage, and this is all built from wood. You'll see all the frames and formers and a bunch of wires in here to hold it all together as well. That's just amazing. There's the aft section of the flying boat, NC4. I'm still fascinated with that. Can't help it. Let's go on over here. I'd like to have a little bit closer look at the Fokker D7. And there it is. Neat machine. Up here we have an F7, and this is called the Seahawk. Beautiful, beautiful machine. And this one's really pretty here. I like how they have it set up to look like it's on a maintenance floor. This is the good old Sopwith Camel. And this is what Eddie Rickenbacker flew. From what all I heard, this airplane was really difficult to fly. Had a lot of quirky flying characteristics. And then here is a Curtiss Hawk. Take a look at the nose of this airplane. This is just amazing. This airplane over here is a vide, and it's pretty interesting looking, to say the least. It's the VE7, built by the vide company. Oh man, this place is amazing. Here we go. This is another beautiful old machine here. Doesn't have an ID on it, so I'm not even gonna know what it is. But I know this one back here. That's the good old Ford Trimotor. Interesting looking airplane. There are a few of those still flying today, and I hope to actually take a ride in one of these days. This almost looks like the Bamboo Bomber. As you can see, lots of biplanes here. This one here has a retractable gear as well, as we saw the other day. This is an F3F, and it was actually found as a wreck and restored. What an amazing job they did. Let's go have a look a little closer at the Trimotor. These Trimotors always have fascinated me. You take a look at the windshield up there. It's pretty cool. Big old engine up in the nose. And then here you see these are your flight control wires, or cables I should say. One of the strut mounted engines out on the wing. And then as we go back into the cabin area, can't go inside, so I'm going to try to actually reach my camera in there and see if I can make some kind of a picture or video. And this is where you would sit in the cabin, and you look up towards the cockpit. Kind of dark in here. Looking how boxy this fuselage structure is, I can only imagine that this thing must have had the crosswing component of a sheet of plywood. I'd like you to look at this corrugated structure. Almost looks like a tin roof, and I'm just going to set my finger on top of it. I'm not going to touch it. I don't like to touch things unless you're allowed to. But this corrugated structure actually added a lot of strength to the skin. And up here, this is the Lockheed Model 10 Navy version. And you can tell because of the little fenders you see above the wheels. And then moving right along here, this is the bell off of the USS Ranger. And got a panel opened up here so you can actually see some of the inner workings, including an oxygen bottle. And this airplane here is pretty neat because it also has folding wings. And as you can see right here, what would happen is this would close whenever the wing was down and grip the app or the lower spar and make it a solid one-piece wing. This is a really amazing airplane right here. And then one of my favorites, the good old F4U Corsair. I like that because they got it hanging from the ceiling with the gear up. Make it look like it's in flight. It's a really well put together museum. Here we have a Beech stagger wing hanging from the ceiling. And the Navy used these as well. It was an amazing airplane, the first ever built by Beechcraft. This here is the F4F-3 Wildcat. And again, it uses that fuselage mounted landing gear. I can imagine this thing was probably a little exciting in a crosswind. But it is just amazing. So let's go back over and look at the P-40. Yep, got the mandatory screaming kid. What would a video be without it? And then up here, there's an N3N biplane. Beautiful airplane. Man, the restoration in these things is epic. We got another seaplane mounted from the ceiling. And as you can see, this was the P-40 Tomahawk. And then we have some of the old Blue Angel airplanes. We'll try to see if I can shoot a decent video of them. A beautiful old Stearman over there. Got to fly one of those a couple years ago. What a nice machine. Got a nice little video going on up there. That's pretty cool. And then another plane after my heart, the T6. So this was actually called the S&J because it was a Navy version of the T6. And now we go look at the ceiling, and now you see the formation of Blue Angels they have suspended from the ceiling. Wow. Here is a Mitsubishi Zero. This was a highly feared airplane in the Pacific Theater in World War II. Very maneuverable, built very light, but finally we built something that would knock it out of the sky. A beautiful B-25. Oh man, look at that. That was in the Doolittle Raiders. And then on the ceiling, we have a PBY Catalina. You see the tail of it. And we're going to go down the fuselage area. And then what they've done here is they have a fuselage cutaway of the PBY. And this is looking in from the tail. I'm going to put my camera up here and have a good look in there. Alrighty. Looks like they have some practice bombs, or dummy bombs as they call them. And then we zoom forward and you can see an observer, the legs I should say, right up there. Looking at the aft section of the Dauntless over there, I love those flaps, or speed brakes as they really are. And then coming over here, this is a cutaway of the Wright 1830 engine that powered the PBY. And then again, this is really set up nice because the little blisters on the side of the fuselage would allow a gunner or an observer. And as you can see, it's kind of neat. It's a great big old bubble on there. I bet it would be fun to ride in there and look out of it. What they've done here is they've actually cut open this fuselage to where you can see all the inner workings of the airplane. And you see there's a couple bunks in there where some of the crewmen could rest. And then coming over here, you have another person stationed, and looks like he is a mechanic working on something. And then sitting up here in the pylon, and this is really cool, is another observer, and I believe that was the flight engineer. Anyway, it's pretty cool. Let's hear what this thing has to say here. And then coming over here, you have the radio operator and a navigator station. And then up here is the flight compartment and the pilots. Man, I'll tell you one thing, they did a fantastic job of putting this together. Let's back up and have a really good look at the whole thing here. And then directly overhead is a PBY that's all put together and intact. Amazing. Here's another Japanese airplane. Let's see what this one is here. This was a George. Anyway, it's an interesting airplane. And then if you look up here, you can see the keel structure of an airship. This is pretty cool. And then here is a German Messerschmitt ME-262. What a machine. And up there on the ceiling is the gondola from one of the airships and an actual nose section off of one of the airships. It's pretty cool. Then we move over here and wow, this is a pretty cool plane right here. This is an AF-2S Guardian. It's a big old bird right here. Got the folding wings. And then here is the TBM Avenger. Now, to the tune of $549, I had the pleasure of riding in one of those a few years ago, right there in the ball turret. Huge fun. Huge fun. Here we have the F7 F3 Tiger Cat. And that is one of my favorite Grummins. It's got those great big old engines on it. R2800s. And I bet that thing was fierce, man. Here we see the Bearcat. The Bearcat was a very tough airplane. Of course, anything Grumman built was pretty tough, to say the least. And this is a actual R2800 engine. And looking at the Bearcat, beautiful. Looks like a search and rescue helicopter, Marine Corps. And another helicopter over there. And then we move over here. And we have, I believe this is the Hellcat. Yes, it is. F6F Hellcat. What an amazing airplane. And looking over there, we see a Grumman duck, J2F duck. That airplane always fascinated me. And then right here we have my favorite, the F4U Corsair. Beautiful machine. Looking back up at the ceiling, it's kind of neat. The centerpiece of this building here is the superstructure of the aircraft carrier. This was off the USS Cabot, CVL-28. Here up on the ceiling is an OS-2U Kingfisher. If you ever visit the North Carolina, USS North Carolina in Wilmington, they have one of these on the deck of it. Pretty cool to see. Let's check out some more stuff. Now as we move along here, you'll see the tail section of the PB-2Y. I never realized these things were so huge. But as you can see, it's a tremendous airplane, and here we have a mock-up of one of the atomic bombs dropped on Japan. this is the PB2Y, looking from the aft left side. Coming over here, of course this is not the original document, but this is the article of surrender signed in Tokyo Bay. And Chester Nimitz signed that. And this was done on the Missouri. Wow. It's interesting, these little models and makeups they have are really pretty cool. This is a salute to Norman Rockwell, one of my favorite artists of all times. And then we have an AM-1 aircraft over here. Yeah, that thing is a beast. Good Lord, look at that thing. Again, I want to show you the wing structure on here. Same thing as the lower section of the spar actually folds down and it locks on the center portion of the spar. Here is one of the biggest reciprocating engines ever built. This is the Pratt & Whitney R4360, and you'll hear that thing called a corncob engine quite a bit. .4360 Wasp Major. What a house. And this airplane that we're looking at here is the AM-1 Mauler torpedo bomber. I guarantee you that thing could do some damage. Here's another interesting looking aircraft here, the FH-1 Phantom. Check out this propeller. This came off of the USS Intrepid. Man, you talk about a big propeller. And it weighed over 27,000 pounds, made of bronze. Incredible. Here is a model of the USS Ronald Reagan. Man, I will tell you one thing, the workmanship on these models is incredible. You can see all the F-18s sitting on it. Okay, we're upstairs now, and this is the gondola of the K-47 airship. Really amazing. Let's take a look in the cockpit. Talk about minimal equipment. See the big wheel on there, that's how they would pitch up and down. It's pretty cool. And in here you can actually see some photos of the original. Upstairs, overlooking the museum, you can see over in the distance, there is the P2BY down there on the floor. And what an amazing machine. Wow. This is looking downstairs on one of the bays of the museum. And you can see there's just so much in here. And then we come up here, as we saw these on the floor earlier. The Sea Ranger helicopter, again, that's a primary trainer. T-28, that was a trainer for the Navy. And then here are the Blue Angel Skyhawks, the A4s. Amazing machine. And as you can see here, this is amazing display. Looking down on the floor, there is the T6 or S&J, the Navy version. And then over here is the Stearman. Pretty amazing piece of equipment. So as we move over into this section, you can see the other hangar bay down on the floor, and just tons and tons and tons of aircraft in here. Let's go up the stairs. And now you see the PBY in the distance, the Japanese A6M0. Here's another view of the Blue Angels A4 Skyhawks. Pretty cool. And that is a PS2 glider. It looks like that'd be so much fun to fly. And now we look down on the museum some more. Fascinating. Okay, I think I found a good place to shoot a video. And this is looking from the second level down on the floor of the museum. That, of course, is a Grumman duck right there. And then we look at more aircraft over in the distance. Can't quite get enough of this. One really fascinating display they have here is a World War II airplane when it was at its station out in the Pacific. So you can see a guy back there working on a Jeep. And this is a Wildcat. You can tell by the landing gear. Just an amazing, amazing display. Here's another view of the museum, and this is the upper surface of the wing of the P2BY. And as you can just look out on the museum floor, all the neat stuff they have out there. And take note of the Hiller helicopter up here. You can tell by their aft fuselage structure. Wow, fascinating. I don't know why I'm so fascinated with this P2BY, but I'd like you to look at the tail section of this thing. It's got a dihedral in it. And this again is the horizontal stabilizer with a left and right vertical stabilizer. And then coming over here is the Hiller helicopter. And then looking out there on the floor, a whole bunch of more displays on the museum. This is interesting here. This raft was adrift for 34 days after a crew had to ditch their aircraft in the ocean during World War II. And here is the actual raft. Okay, so I'm over in Hangar Bay 1, the last building of the museum, and don't have a whole lot of juice left in my camera battery here, so I'm going to shoot an overall video of what we have in here, or what they have, correction. And fascinating. See the old DC-3 up on the ceiling. Had a different nose on it. Didn't have quite as blunt a nose as a standard DC-3 because of the avionics in it. And then here is the VH-3, which was a presidential helicopter. And President Nixon flew on this helicopter. This was the old Marine One. And fascinating helicopter. Come up here and take a look inside. So the VH-3 served under both the Nixon and the Ford administration. Kind of like the way the rotors fold back on it. And let's climb the stairs and have a look. I thought the presidential aircraft. Okay, now we're going to climb the steps of VH-3 Marine One and have a look at what we got in here. This would be the cockpit. This was a 2-engine helicopter. And then we look into the aft cabin, and that's where the president and his staff would be. We can see good old Nixon standing over there, sitting in his seat. Looks a little skinnier than the real one. I remember seeing the Coast Guard years ago do a demo with this HH-52 helicopter. And then we have the great big old seaplane back here. I'm gonna see if I have enough juice to shoot one last video. And we can see here is the E-2 Hawkeye. And a bunch of other stuff. I'm gonna shoot one down on the ground level and then one at the ceiling. Hopefully the battery will last long enough to do it. Now let's go up. And there's a CH-46 Sea Knight helicopter. And looks like a bird dog over there. And this big monster seaplane, which is SP-5B Marlin, I'm sorry. And then we have a Grumman Goose over there hanging from the ceiling. And the old DC-3.